All right, we'll continue along here with our content boxes. Now our mockup calls for these headers to be to the side of the logos. Right now our design has them up above here. So let's add a little bit of CSS to these elements to make that effect. Now we're going to come over here. We already have a rule set up for homeboxes H2. And I've gone ahead and I've actually added one space in between each of the CSS rules. As we're getting quite a few rules here, I just wanted to space that out so it's easier to read here on screen. You don't need to apply that to your own design, of course. You can if you want. On this header 2, let's go ahead and set the display to inline-block. And we'll save that and come back and refresh. And you can see that it does in fact set that element down just where we want it. The other problem is the text is actually coming up into this space. So if we set an outline in this object to see it, like I've done before, let's see exactly where the bounding box is there. And you can see it's just around the text. Because we made that inline block, it's no longer a full block level element. So if I give this guy a width that extends all the way to the edge, that text won't be able to peek up on this line. So let's give this guy a width of 180 pixels, should be about the correct width, including this area here. And that looks like that's about right. I don't think any text will be able to squeeze up in there. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and remove that border. And I think we actually want these things to be quite a bit bigger. Let's make these 24 points and refresh. Yeah, that's about the right size. Now we also want to play around with the default font settings. So we're going to come back up to our body tag, clear back up at the top here of our CSS sheet, and whoops, a little bit too far. And let's set some of these initial font properties. So we want all fonts to have a line dash height of 1.2 ems, and we're going to set the color of all these to this this little bit lighter color of gray inside of our document. So if I come in here, get my text tool and just highlight this, we want this color to be just a little bit lighter gray, not quite that dark black. So I'll just hit OK here, and let's just kind of double check this. See how that looks. So let's save that and come back and refresh, and that's looking closer. So I want this color to kind of match that color. That's a little bit bigger. We have a little bit larger line height between these elements, and that's looking close. So the only other problem here, if I zoom in, you'll see this issue. I've noticed this a video or two back, but I didn't want to address it until we had a few of those things fleshed out. But the color of my background actually doesn't match the color of these images, and they should. So I must have selected the wrong color. So I'm going to come back to Photoshop and just make sure that I select the correct color for the background. So I'll come in here and I'm going to get my eyedropper tool and select that exact color right by the W. And let's copy that, F1. Back to our CSS sheet. And so the background color of back down here to the bottom of our side should be that color, and also the content. So yeah, you can see that's a different value. So I'm not sure, I don't recall where I got that value from, but I definitely picked the wrong one. So let's come back here and zoom out and refresh. And there, now that's correct. You can see there's no line around those images. So that's looking pretty good. The only other thing I want to do is on this header 2 tag, this text bumps up a little too close to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of a bottom margin on that header 2. So I'll just say margin dash bottom, and I'm just going to make that 5 pixels. Push that text away just a little bit, so that's looking a little closer. I might even add a little bit of top margin so the top of the C is exactly in line with the top of this element, and same thing for the W. So we'll come in here and margin dash top, we'll set that to 5 pixels just to see what that looks like. We're just going to kind of guess and check here, and that's pretty actually close right there. I'll call that good. All right, so the last thing we're going to do to these headings is we'll just add a little bit of CSS3 to help separate them from the background. So I'm going to come in here and let's go ahead and create some more CSS on this rule. We're going to add a text shadow. So we'll say text dash shadow. This is a CSS3 property. I'm going to say 1 pixel, 1 pixel, 5 pixels, blue, just to illustrate this. Now the first value is the horizontal offset, the vertical offset, the amount of blur, and the color of the shadow. This is kind of like a CSS3 drop shadow. So if I refresh, you can see that adds that blue back there. Now I'm going to switch the blue to black and refresh, and you can see that. And I'm going to take the blur value down to 0 pixels and refresh. And you can see that adds just a little bit. If I zoom all the way in here and scroll down, you can see it adds that little bit of a right black so that it sets it off from the page a little bit. It's not so flat. So, and if I don't want a solid black color, you can actually do RGBA values here. So I can say RGBA, and I could this is red, green, blue channel. So it's 0, 0, 0 if we're working with the channels. And the last value is the alpha, or the transparency. So I could say something like 0.7, which is 70% black, and that's a little bit faded, so it's not so in quite as a stark contrast there. So those two boxes we're going to consider done. So they match up fairly well here. The text of those boxes we could play around with and maybe adjust the text size to make those match up with our mockup's text size here. But we'll kind of tweak a few of those little minor things once we get the rest of this content area fleshed out.